I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Tuesday, October the 18th, brought to you in part by Safeguard. Safeguard wants to know, is your dewormer working? Text the word SAFE to 48109 to find out. You'll also be entered to win a Traeger pellet grill. For more information, go to Merck Animal Health. Bulls are roosting. I just told you on our last visit to start the week that I believe the worm has turned, and we're now going to start reaping the rewards of these tight supplies of commercial cattle at every level, starting with your market-ready finished cattle. And now to start this week, I mean, everything is just coming up bullish. And I hope that some of you people that invest in speculating in futures, people that are in fund management, I hope you guys are listening, because here's the proof, and there's going to be more to come, and it's just going to be progressively more evidence that we are extremely tight on commercial cattle, and it's just going to have to result in much higher prices at every level. Now, the feeder cattle have been pretty toppy here for the last 6 or 8 months, and I don't know that we're going to see a whole lot of a rush in what few yearlings we have left, because we've still got a lot of calves to sell, because it's just that time of year. But they've been running pretty high all along, and now our calves are coming up because people are starting to see that yearlings are going to be worth a lot if they have anything to feed them to get them there. But what we're really going to start seeing is these fat cattle starting to come up in price. We broke 150, not on a weighted average, not on the whole scale, but we did break $1.50 in direct fed cattle trading, and some big bunches there last week. And now we're going to see, I think the barn doors are off now. I think everybody in the Northern Plains is going to want at least 150 for their cattle this week. And even guys in the Southern Plains who were tickled to get 145 last week, they're going to look up and say, hey, I want 150 also. I remember the last time, 8 or 9 years ago, when the cattle market was coming up big, and we saw the all-time highs of 2014. I was working for USDA Market News, and one of my best contacts, an older feeder that had been doing it for many years, been feeding cattle, and he got 150 live, and he was very excited about it. And I said, well, congratulations. I said, I bet you've never done that before, because at that time we hadn't seen that before. And he says, oh yeah, I've sold a lot of cattle for $1.50 dressed. And I think a lot of people are going to be thinking that same thing coming up. But you look at our fed cattle marketing last week, not only on your 5-area feeding region, but which it was light for 62,000. And normally I tell you that if the market's up, we see more trade. And that is normally the way. Now, people that are against fully negotiated trade, they don't say that. But yes, typically when the market's up, you see more negotiated trade. We didn't see that last week, and I don't believe it's because people didn't want to sell cattle that way. There just wasn't that many finished cattle to buy. And your packers didn't want to give too much of that big price out, and so they just went with what they went with. But nationwide, if you count all the cattle that sold on a direct basis, we didn't see that much trade. You look at 75,600 pure negotiated sales nationwide. That's fairly light. We've been getting around 100 here the last few weeks. Negotiated grid sales were 40,800 head. Few forward contracts of 6,100, and then formula sales of 257,000, which is 20 to 30, maybe more thousand short of what we normally see. That's all the cattle that's moved, basically, other than just in a brick and mortar sale barn. And we don't have that many fat cattle sales in brick and mortar sale barns. Maybe you get over in the east part, where I used to work out in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, come into Indiana, Ohio, places like that. But for the most part, they're not going to have over 200 or 300 head of fat cattle. But You look at all of our direct sales of fat cattle nationwide, all the different ways you sell them, whether it's pure negotiated, negotiated grid, forward contracts, or the big one, which is formulas. Last week, we only peddled 380,000 head. We always slaughter 500,000 steers and heifers every week. And when packers have only purchased 380,000, where's the other ones going to come from? You look at 2 weeks ago or 2 months ago, at the week in mid-August there, they had moved on the similar type of edition 495,000. So 115,000 less than that traded this past week. I just don't think the cattle are out there, guys. And they keep running these aggressive chain speeds. Even on Monday, they had 126,000. Well, they keep that up. You know, they're going to get up into, well in the high 600s. Their cattle just aren't out there anymore. Now, we do import some beef, but we don't import a lot of slaughter steers and heifers. I mean, hardly any. What we do import of slaughter cattle is cows. And we've been killing the cows like crazy, and I've been telling you guys that too. Not sure if anybody's been paying attention, but these are things that you don't see people talk about all the time. But only moving 380,000 finished steers and heifers last week compared to what's typical of 495,000 just a couple of months ago, and it would have been in that range pretty much every other week too, but I just picked that week out. In last week, our slaughter information come back for the week ending the 1st of October, and we had slaughtered that week, which was, we're always 2 weeks behind, that week we slaughtered 519,600 steers and heifers. And last week we only sell 380,000 of them. Where are we going to come up with the rest of them? You look at your cow and heifer slaughter. Since July the 1st, 10 of 11 weeks since then, we have slaughtered more females than we have males, and that never happens. It just doesn't ever happen. I've been telling you guys here, we've been shooting the does more than we have the bucks, and the only time you do that's when you're thinning the herd down. We have been thinning this herd down big time. 10 of 11 weeks, just the past 11 weeks, we've slaughtered more females than males. You look back, we've got all of our slaughter information now for the first 3 quarters of 2022. And during the first 3 quarters of 2022, our beef cow slaughter, not the dairies, the beef cow slaughter, the factories that make these steers and heifers we talk about all the time, our slaughter or harvest on them is up 13.1% over last year. Last year's beef cow slaughter was 9.1% higher than 2020. This is unbelievable, guys. Your heifer slaughter has been amazingly large also. We haven't been keeping any of those back. I do see on our sales now, those guys that can't afford it are keeping some of these fancy lighter heifers back. But you know what, it's going to be 3 years till we see anything out of them. But heifer slaughter, the first 3 quarters of this year is the largest since 2004. And it's 750,000 higher than the average of the last 5 years. I mean, these are big time, major bullish data, and that's why I'm saying that the bulls are roosting. Let's look at your board to start the week out on Monday. October live cattle futures were up 92 cents at 147.87. December up $1.42 at 149.20. All of your back months were higher, up 55 cents to up $1.10. Feeder cattle gained big time, and why wouldn't they when we're starting to see some of this news? And if they don't continue to go higher on your futures, it's just because people are totally ignoring this. But October feeder cattle up 95 cents on Monday at 174.75. November up 162 at 176.40. Your back months were all up big. September was only up 177, but all the others were up well over $2 and as much as $2.60 higher. Corn was down 6.25 cents at 6.83.5. Look at your weighted average on last week's negotiated 5-area trade on your fed cattle. Just 62,000. Like I said, it was lighter, even though we had a higher market. And I just don't think they're out there to buy, guys. And the guys that do have them know how bad your packers want them, and they're ready to get paid. It's like show me the money time. But 62,000 last week's fully negotiated trade was 20,000 less than the previous week's negotiated trade. And the same week a year ago, it was 79,700. Live sales of steers and heifers were steady to $2 higher, from 143 to 151. In the northern plains, it was mostly 148, 21,800 head sold at 148. In the southern plains, it was mostly 145. Now it was $1 higher. But in your 5 area, your weighted average on live steers was 146.99. That was up 76 cents on your weighted average compared to the previous week's steer weighted average. You see that our price spread went up to 151. There was only one load of cattle that was confirmed at 151. There was 1,157 head that sold at 150. You're going to see significantly more cattle trading at 150 this week, or they won't let them go. I mean, we got them by the short hairs, guys. You got to take advantage of it. You remember what it's like when they put their foot on your head underwater and you were just gargling there until we got completely through the pandemic. Now's the time to make them pay. Look at your dress sales, steers and heifers last week, steady to $1 higher from 228 to 234. Most of our dress cattle in the northern plains brought 232, which would have been $2 higher on the bulk. But your weighted average on dressed steers last week was 231.60, 32 cents higher than your weighted average on dressed steers the previous week. Like I mentioned earlier, your nationwide trade fully negotiated was 75,600 head. Only 19% of those, or 14,200 of them, were for the 2 to 4 week delivery. Normally they like to have about 35% of those. They don't have anything lined up for the future. They're going to have nothing but hooks hanging, wanting to run those chain speeds wide open. And I mean, it's coming home to roost, guys. This bullishness is finally hitting home. But negotiated grid sales 40,800, forward contract 6,100, and formula sales of 257,000. It's light because they don't have cattle out there to formula either. Another bullish thing. On Monday, we saw exactly 0 sales confirmed negotiated cash sales. Normally you always, especially when you see some new prices like that, I'm sure they would have dangled 150 out there for anybody. Nobody bid on it. It's time to get paid for these fat cattle, especially if you have some well-finished fat cattle. Box beef cutout values were higher on Monday too. Choice cuts 248.14 up $1.16. Selects up 267 at 219.61. Talk about what else is going on. Beaver County stockyards in Beaver, Oklahoma. They got a lighter run this week, but still 2,500 to 3,000 head. 12 to 15 loads of yearlings. Talked to Jeff Slatton, right up there in no man's land in the Oklahoma Panhandle. They didn't get any rain over this deal we had over the weekend like we did down here in the Texas Panhandle, but also over into western Oklahoma. But he talked to some guys in the meat of western Oklahoma, further south and a little bit east of him, got a big rain. I mean, as much as 4 inches of rain. You know how much wheat pasture there is in rural western Oklahoma? Oh my gosh, guys, you talk about a multi-million-dollar rain. It was fantastic, and they've got some more chances over in Oklahoma, coming up here in the next several days. But next week they're going to have a big sale of Beaver County stockyards, already expecting over 5,000 head, with many of those reputation consignments of fancy ranch calves. But here today on Tuesday, just about 2,500 to 3,000. You can view and bid that sale on dvauction.com. Talk about your feeder cattle market, your real-time index on DV auction late in the day on Monday, sitting at 172.83, which was 33 cents lower than the end of last week. And we had some higher Northern Plains markets late last week, which lifted that thing up a little bit. And that's the reason that it fell early this week. But I've been talking about how much higher your CME cash feeder cattle index has been running than your real-time index, because somehow those cheaper cattle just aren't making their way into your CME feeder cattle index. Well, it's finally come down, and you look at the latest available is only 25 cents from your RTI, which is always up to date and current. Let's talk about your big high volume sales on Monday. Oklahoma City, Oklahoma National Stockyard, 7,000 head. And these receipts, these feeder cattle receipts, have still been running pretty heavy because of the drought, guys. You can't really look at those and fully appreciate how light we are on numbers. And that's going to come into play when we get to this month's cattle on feed report. But 7,000 head in Oklahoma City, whenever we get later into the fall, I mean, they're going to be wondering where cattle are at, because they are selling them so early. But in Oklahoma City on Monday, feeder steers were steady to $3 higher. Feeder heifers were $1 to $4 higher. There's not many yearlings around, guys. Steer calves steady to $2 higher. Heifer calves $2 to $4 higher. The percentage of cattle weighing over 600 pounds in Oklahoma City on Monday was only 40%. That is also significant and bullish to the market. Joplin Regional Stockyards, only 3,800 head. Been super dry around there too, guys. Air market, which that's a light run for them, not as much to choose from. Steady to $5 lower for the most part, except for Pee-wee steers, and they sold steady to $4 higher. Our Zoetta stick-out sale of the day was up in the Northern Plains at Faith, South Dakota, at Faith Livestock Auction. They had 7,700 head of feeders there. Big sale in Faith, South Dakota. Those guys are doing a good job. It was kind of a calf special, or for sure calf special. Most all the cattle that they had on offer was 400 to 600 pound calves. The steers were $2 to $5 higher. The heifers were $1 to $7 lower. You know, they just, guys that are buying those to background, they just want the steers a whole lot more. But look at this automated market report out of Faith Livestock Auction. This is the only place you're going to see this market report, because the market's not reported by a third-party entity other than Cattle Market Central here with DV Auction. But look at 1,414 head of four-weight steer calves, average 461 at 236.78. 3,059 head of five-weight steers in Faith, average 551 with a weighted average price of 215.87. 1,127 head of four-weight heifers, average 456 with a weighted average price of 205.03. And 1,086 head of five-weight heifers. Notice some of those guys up there are keeping those fancy light heifers back, because they know they need to replenish, because they'd sold so many of them over a year ago in that drought. But 1,086 head of 530 pound on the average five-weight heifers, average 195.38. Give you a few individual quotes. How about Torrington livestock markets? In Torrington, Wyoming, 55 head of Pee-wee steers weighed 375 at 253. Thought that was impressive. How about Callaway Livestock Center in Kingdom City, Missouri? Good friends there. You know, the yearlings are short, but 64 head of 849 pound yearling steers in Callaway Livestock Center bring 176.10. But your Mackerson, no BS, top quote for the day, indeed come out of Faith, South Dakota at Faith Livestock Auction. 107 head, 508 pound steers bring $2.34 a pound. And that's your feeder flash for Tuesday.